Holy smokies, there's a lot of people here.
How are you, Paul? Welcome.
I'm pretty damn good, as a matter of fact.
Good to have you. Thank you for joining us to share these great Rieslings with us.
I am honored. There are what, 200,000 people on this chat tonight? Is that right?
Not quite, but it's up there. Maybe it's more. It looks like you haven't gotten out in a while, so maybe you haven't seen too many people.
You know what? 7 weeks in the bunker has caused a lot of changes in my life. I do like where my hair is growing with this. Sunlight does this to you. How are you doing?
I am great. Good to see you. I am always great when I am drinking some nice wines, and we're doing that tonight, you know. So as you may or may not know, I'm a huge Riesling fan, and I know you've kind of been one of the people really who has become basically a champion of like the Riesling grape here, and you have been really adamant on the front lines of the past like 5-10 years, you know, of kind of bringing this grape to a lot of collectors' attentions in New York City and being a real champion for the grape. So talk a little bit about that. Where did your love with Riesling start? Would you call it a love affair, or is it a marriage at this point?
Well, listen, not to get so graphic because it is only Monday night, I would literally say I came out of the womb with a glass of Riesling in my hands. Mom wasn't too happy with the experience, but so be it. Unlike a lot of my peers and maybe all of us together in this chat tonight, I never had one wine in my career that turned my head and say, you need to pursue wine and you need to pursue this career in wine. I was born in the restaurant business, so I sort of knew where I was going to go. But the most influential part of my life that allowed this grape juice to shine brightly, I did not say brightest, but brightly, was that in the 1980s, I was a fan of alternative British new wave music. And with my friend group at university, I had to beg and plead for them to listen to my music. So in putting up a good fight for them to listen to all of this other cool music coming from around the world, I then, when I went in to join my family's restaurant, decided to fight the good fight for those varietals or wines or regions that were not getting proper due in my mind. And while the summer of Riesling allows me to preach the gospel of Riesling from my little pulpit down at Terroir Wine Bar, our goal is never to say that Riesling is the greatest grape and or wine. All we want to do in general, and hopefully with all of us coming together tonight, is to say that Riesling is truly one of the greatest grapes on the planet. And with the 4 wines that are behind you, John, and that you were kind enough to send to the bunker, I think we will see that. Now, everyone in this room tonight, do they have all these wines, or do you have any Riesling at all in front of you?
Some might not. We're going to get some posts from people. It's going to be mainly you and I talking, and we'll get some questions that Lily will kind of relay from the crowd. But a lot of people want to kind of learn about the Riesling grape. And, you know, I think, you know, it's interesting. People forget that Riesling is really one of the 2 noble grape varietals, right? I mean, there's on the red side, there's Pinot and Cabernet, or the noble ones, and on the white, it's Chardonnay and Riesling. But Riesling kind of got, you know, bastardized, I think, in the early part of like American wine history by getting the cheap gallons and this mass-produced stuff in California, and the Blue Nun being like the commercial wine, and Liebfraud milk and all that, and they didn't realize there's this whole serious world of Riesling, just like there is, you know, a serious world of Burgundy or Bordeaux. So I know that's been a big problem for, you know, a lot of people's perceptions in this country, but that's really changed over the last 10 or 15 years.
Do you mind if I be a little bit of a contrarian?
Okay.
Why is Chardonnay a noble grape? And that's a self-serving question. Because the grape itself, in terms of the flavor profile, is not that broad. For me, and if anyone in this chat tonight is going to give me the middle finger, I will not be upset by that, believe me. I love the world of wine. As long as it gives voice to place and it's balanced and all those things, rock and roll, bring it on. But Chardonnay as a grape is relatively innocuous. Chardonnay as a wine, in most hands, is relatively a blank canvas. Chardonnay is the grape that allows you as a winemaker who spent tens of thousands of dollars going to UC Davis to craft any type of wine that you so choose. And that's awesome. But this grape in our glass tonight, called Riesling, is a goddamn yummy grape in and of itself that happens to craft unbelievable wine when planted in the right places. And what all of us, I believe, on this phone call tonight or video love are grapes that give voice to place. And because Riesling is made in the vineyard, you are a wine grower when you make Riesling. You're not a wine maker. And few grapes allow you to see right through the glass, the juice in the glass, into the vineyard, unlike this grape right here. You see very little, if any. Oh, John, I'm on a roll. Give me a moment here, buddy. You see very little wine making taking place when you drink this. Yes, you're right. Riesling is the only grape that suffers. It suffers because if we were to ask the people, hopefully there's very few people on the streets of New York tonight, but if we were to go out and say, describe Riesling with one word, the vast majority would unfortunately use the dreaded S word. And it's because at one point in their life, they happen to have a Riesling that leaned in that direction. But there is a great quote from Mr. Friedrich Nietzsche, who said, convictions are more enemies of truth than lies. So Riesling suffers from being that only wine where you've had one iteration and it has now painted the entire world of Riesling. To your historical point, John, I'll go back a little further. At the turn of the 20th century in the United States of America, and all of you tomorrow morning can go on and do this. Go to the New York City Public Library, which has the biggest collection of restaurant menus and wine lists on the planet. And look up those lists from the turn of the 20th century. And you will see this amount of Burgundy. You will see this amount of Bordeaux. You will see this amount of Champagne. And you will see this amount of German Riesling on those wine lists, because there was no question 120 years ago how great this wine was.
Right.
And then what happened?
Yes. Let me interrupt you for a second, Paul, and just kind of bring it full circle. You are right. Like 100, 150 years ago, I mean, the TBAs were more expensive than Yquem. They were like some of the most expensive wines, some of the most collectible wines. But you're right, people's palates, 100 years ago, you're talking like the 1800s, did favor a lot of sweeter style wines and stuff. And the German wines, were made in this kind of sweeter, off-dry style, the best wines for many, many years. And that's changed recently with the GGs and the Gross Gewächs and the dry styles that are pushing the alcohol levels up and are making wines that appeal to international, palates. I mean, I don't know what you find. Do you find yourself drinking the classic old school Cabinets and Spätlesers, or do you really find yourself drinking more of the drier wines, or that's what you think people want to see more of in their glass?
Well, Mr. Capon, a small correction, if I may, and I know you're going to grow to hate me over the next few minutes, but the vast majority of wine produced in Germany at the turn of the 20th century was dry.
Okay.
They drank that in Germany. That was not for the export market, because you are right. The sweeties were those highly prized wines.
Right.
But 120 years ago, there were not market pressures to harvest the grapes, make the wine, and get it to market the following spring as there is now. So those wines weren't bottled for 3 to 4 years, and they were dry. The sweet wines were the exception, the absolute exception, and were highly prized. Then we have the first 50 years of the 20th century. There was an utter shit show in terms of what was going on in Germany. And when they came out of it, yes, because of American servicemen who fought in that theater of war, plus a few other things, there was a gravitation towards sweeter wines. But that was a small part of the marketplace and did not define all of Germany. To your specific question, John, I generally go to Germany for the cabinet level of ripeness because no one else on the planet Earth can make that wine. We can get dry Riesling from a lot of places, but cabinet ripeness level with roughly 20 grams of residual sugar, 8 grams of total acidity, 10% alcohol. I want to drink those wines every goddamn day. And right now, at 5 o'clock, when I crack open, forgive me, a bottle of wine, I want to know that I'm good for that bottle by myself. And I can do that with that style of wine. And to be honest, and we're going to taste them tonight, Alsace can make great dry wines. Austria can make great dry wines. New York State, Australia, on and on we go, as can Germany. But that unique style of cabinet rocks and rolls.
We have a couple of people drinking some Selbach Osters and some Peter Lauers tonight. So we got some Riesling lovers in the crowd, which is good to see. Talk to us about this Dunhoff. I mean, Dunhoff's one of the great producers in Germany from the Nahe region, correct?
Yep.
And this is a Trocken style wine that we're drinking. And what do you think about, I mean, personally, to be honest, I like the Trocken styles. I like the dry styles of Riesling. I drink a lot of Austrian wines. I drink a lot of the German wines like these Dunhoffs. And I do prefer the drier style myself. Not that I don't like the off-dryer, the cabinets or stuff, but I just feel like it's more, I don't know, it's just more for me.
I think in very general terms, these drier style of wines play ball in a lot of different cuisines. They're extremely food friendly. I think the Trocken world today, the GG world as you define it, after 20 years of those wines, we're in a sweet spot. And forgive me for using the S word, because these wines ain't sweet. They are bone dry.
Right.
But when they first started, they were a little bit heavy-handed. And by heavy-handed, I mean wines that were 13.5% alcohol. They were big and four square. They lacked a filigree that we associate with great Riesling. Today, that Dunhoff is 12.5 alcohol. The soil in the Hole and Fad vineyard is limestone with a little bit of red sandstone. And when you have that wine in your glass, first of all, the nose is intoxicating. You don't need, the cost of the journey is in the aroma of this wine right here.
What are some of the aromas you're getting out of this wine?
Well, I have generally stopped myself from using the adjective minerality because it really means nothing, because we can't figure out what we get out of the soil that then goes into that glass. But this wine, this Dunhoff, smells of wet cement after a rainstorm. It smells of chalk, just after my Christian brother teacher at De La Salle Academy in Toronto crafted this unbelievable poem on the board and then threw the piece of chalk at me because I was falling asleep. That smell, combined with lots of stone fruit, peaches, apricots, a little bit of plum in there. It's lean. If steel had an aroma, that wine smells steely. And then on the palate, long and lean and mean. This wine just goes on forever. I've been prattling on, I think, a good 120 seconds. And this wine is still present. It's not overwhelming. I guess it was inferred at the beginning of my little presentation. I am from Canada.
Yeah,
I grew up wanting to be one of two things. I wanted to be a hockey player or a Zamboni driver. One of those two things might still happen.
Yeah, it looks like you ended up somewhere in the middle.
Well, after this is all said and done, I am going to go to school to learn how to drive a Zamboni. When I go to a hockey game, with all due respect to the 3 periods of hockey, I sit there between periods. I don't go get my beer and hot dog. I watch that Zamboni go on the ice and go around the ice, sweep up the detritus of the game just played, lay down a brand new sheet of water, smooth it out, which freezes them so we can play a brand new game of hockey. I am mesmerized by this piece of equipment. I think mankind, we are super duper smart that we could create this machine that can do this.
Right.
The reason why I'm fixating upon, whoa, John, hold on. The reason why I'm fixating upon the Zamboni is because the acid in this wine is like a Zamboni. It cleans the palate so that you want another bite of food and a sip of wine, and this game keeps on going. There is energy. There is electricity in this wine. It will not exhaust your palate.
Very good. I'm glad you tied the Zamboni thing and cleaned that up nicely, just like the wet ice that it works on. But I hear you. That was very great analogies, great descriptors. And now I can understand why we have you here to talk about Riesling.
Well, my mom wrote down everything I'm saying tonight so we can raise a glass to her. She's very good at this stuff.
Yeah, so in Canada, they make a lot of Riesling. So I guess Riesling was kind of around, you know, at a early age or earlier age, whenever it was okay to drink up there. But I mean, I guess there's a lot more Canadian Rieslings and wines of this nature.
Certainly Canada, much like Germany, Austria, Alsace, anything in the uber northern clime, is a cool climate wine region. It seems natural that Riesling should thrive there, and it is doing quite well. If any of you are involved in trade relations, I would beg you to go to Washington and then to Ottawa to open up the trade floodgates so we could get more Canadian wine into this place, because John Capon needs more Canadian wine in his world. Let me just put that out there.
That's something I probably can count on one hand and not remember any of those experiences. But I know there are some nice wines up there. But you're right, I haven't been exposed to them at all. And but I'm working my way through Austria and Germany on a regular basis. I drink these wines at home all the time, like all the time. I am a huge fan of not only the Rieslings, but the Gruners. And we have 3 countries here. We not only have Germany, which is, of course, the iconic place for Riesling, but the next one we have is from Austria, which is a great region in its own right. Talk to us a little bit about Austria and Nikolai Hoff from the Wachau region, which I'm probably mispronouncing. Am I mispronouncing that, Lily?
Wachau.
Wachau. So like, Wachau. It's like, right, okay, sorry. So, Wachau. Gosh, that doesn't sound as nice. But talk to us, Paul, about...
Well, right now we do have 4 wines, but let's say we have 3 wine regions tonight in general that we're going to focus on: Germany, Austria, Alsace. And a goal for us tonight should be, in very simple terms, what are the differences between these 3 areas when it comes to Riesling? For Germany, I would proffer that German Riesling, again, I'm being as general as I possibly can be, produces Rieslings with back-breaking acidity and the potential of residual sugar. On the other side of that stylistic coin, and we're going there next, John, will be Alsace. Unabashed sunlight produces big, richer, more 4-square wines. Austria stylistically is right in the middle. The acidity of Germany, the power of Alsace. So what we see in this wine, the Nikolaev from the Wachau region, when we all gather together on the other side of this pandemic, John, Acker has its own airplane, right? Just nod your head.
Sure.
Okay, good. So we're all going to take a culinary trip to Vienna together. If you love culinary tourism,
I don't know if it fits 62 people, but we'll work on getting a bigger one. I'm going to talk to Herb.
Okay, good. So we're going to go to Vienna, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to have some kick-ass meals. Of course, schnitzel's got to be in there somewhere. But the next day, we're going to get into our luxury coach, because that's how Mr. Capon rolls, and we're going to drive about an hour and a half northwest along the Danube River. And we're going to come to this region called the Wachau. Super steep slopes. The vast majority of the vineyards are on the northern side of the river. perfect south facing. The Wachau region, much like Germany, has a specific classification system for their wines. They base it on the ripeness level of the grape at harvest. So John happened to choose for us tonight a wine called Federspiel. If you ever look at a label from Austria, generally they're very simple. Gives you the grape name, vineyard name, producer, vintage, rock and roll. Sometimes we're going to see some other words on there, and you're going to know that you are in the Wachau region. Now, roughly the equivalent of a bone-dry light wine would be called Steinfeder. A cabinet ripeness level, but fermented bone-dry, would be Federspiel. And grapes harvested at Spätlese ripeness level, but fermented dry, would be Schmaragd. So tonight, once again, the Federspiel, lighter, wispy. When you smell this, it is vitally different, of course, than the Donhoff. Not just because of the
riper, right?
But this doesn't smell like a Granny Smith apple. This smells like an old delicious apple that you've left on your counter for about a week. It's gotten a little bit mealy, overripe, and you smell that overripeness in the glass. It leans towards that apple, pear, more citrus style fruit. And on the palate, as would be indicative of these vineyards, perfectly terraced, at the perfect 45-degree angle, all southward facing, bigger, riper. The Donhoff would come around as a circle. This wine would be four squared off corners, bigger structured wine. The Donhoff, once again, limestone soil. What we see here is something called gneiss, G-N-E-I-S-S, which is a metamorphic rock similar to schist. Gotta love schist, ladies and gentlemen. So oh, sorry, John.
I can say that you're definitely, your note may be full of schist, but I can't. I've never tasted this wine, before, and what I'm getting out of it is like the sweetness. And I was just checking the alcohol level. I'm like, oh, is this a lower alcohol?
Did you just use the S word?
No, schist. I didn't. I thought sweet was the S word.
Keep going.
Right. I mean, clearly, Paul, you know your schist. And we appreciate you bringing this level of expertise that is actually, I'm learning from talking to you, which is exciting for me because, I'm a wine lover. I drink every day, and, I drink these wines all the time, but, I don't get down into the subsoil necessarily all the time. And, but what I, like to talk about is how the wine tastes. And obviously, clearly, you see this kind of little bit more ripeness, right? Sweetness. And all your comments were spot on and really fantastic. And, but I was checking, so they get that sweetness, but the alcohol levels are still higher. So how do they do that without, because is that, normally when you get sweeter wines, the alcohol levels come down a little bit for traditional Rieslings, or talk about that a little bit.
So John, are you saying that this wine has perceptible residual sugar?
I guess I would say that.
I am an honored guest in this conversation tonight. Am I allowed to disagree with you?
I'm going to disagree with John, so you can disagree with John Paul.
Everybody disagrees with me.
Yeah, not always.
Ladies and gentlemen of the broader world jury of Riesling, there is no perceptible residual sugar in this Nikolaihof von Steim Riesling from the 2017 vintage. It is round, it is richly fruited, and I'm not using fruit as a euphemism for that dreaded S word. It is exactly what a wine should be. Last time I checked, wine is made from a grape, which is a fruit, and it therefore should smell fruity, and that's what this wine does. And that roundness, that richness on the palate speaks to the ripeness of these grapes from these incredible vineyards that had perfect sunlight during the growing season, and you smell, you taste that sunlight in the glass. Actually, compared, if I may, to the Donhoff before it, it is a 0.5 degree less alcohol, but it feels bigger.
Right.
That is the sun shining through in this glass of wine.
Okay. Well, perhaps residual sugar was technically the wrong term, but what I was feeling was like a little bit more sweetness and ripeness as you like indicate. I mean, it's definitely noticeable. I mean, without question. I mean, it does have what I would call wealthier fruit in that it's more open, it's expansive, it's richer, it's riper. You know, that's just what I'm tasting.
Cool.
Paul, can I ask you a question? Because someone brought it up. Do you find that this wine has a little bit more glycerin on the palate perceptibly than the Donhoff does?
I think you, as I'm sitting here staring at my glass and you can't see the legs, and I got to tell you, my glass is perfectly clean. Mom did it earlier today. So as I swirl it around, this wine is really coating the side of the glass. So I would agree to the glycerin comment, but glycerin after all is sugar, right?
I thought we weren't going to say that, but
I
yeah.
know. But there is no indication of sweetness in this wine at all. That roundness, that richness, I think comes from the soil and the sunlight on these grapes.
I think it also, when people talk about sweetness in Riesling, sorry to say the word, it has kind of, to John's point, it speaks more to the quality of the fruit, kind of the flavors that the fruit brings versus, and thinking like, if a wine smells or tastes akin to mango, then therefore the wine is sweet, because that flavor or that aroma in my mental kind of sensory connections in my head, those two go together. Mango equals sweet, therefore the wine is sweet. But because it's not, and this wine also has tremendous acidity on it, like I can't not make a face when I drink this wine because of how much acidity is in it. I think people kind of confound those two aspects of the wine, the fruit quality and actual perceptible sugar.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to skirt over that issue. Sorry, John.
I say a lot of wines can have sweet fruit, even, you know, great Burgundies, they have sweet fruit, but it finishes dryly. But I think like in the Riesling world, there's this sensitivity about sweet and calling it sweet because you want, there's, you know, then people kind of put it in that box, right? And that's what I think we want to kind of, or a lot of people want to change that perception about Riesling. Is that a fair comment?
It is an absolutely fair comment, which is why, much like the word minerality being exercised from my wine vocabulary, I am not using the word sweetness when I describe the flavor profile of this wine, because I am separating out what happens on my schnoz with what happens in this thing right here. And lest we forget, the last time I smelled a bowl of sugar, it did not smell. Sweetness doesn't smell. You only taste sweetness. So if I appear a little sensitive, John, to the use of that word, it's because if you were to say that about some of those incredible Burgundies that you have consumed in your long wine life, no one is going to look at you edgewise. But the second we mention that word in relation to sweetness, most of us turn our head and say, I didn't ask for a sweet wine.
Right.
And then we go down this rabbit's hole, and it's a poop show. So I'd rather stay away from that. And I'm not staying away from it because I'm misinterpreting or I'm trying to put something across about this wine. This is a dry wine, which is as richly fruited as any great wine everyone that I'm looking at on this screen has ever enjoyed. And ultimately, what I ask of my wines is that they be yummy. And the roundness, the completeness of this Nikolaihoff equates to absolute yumminess.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like that. Richly fruited. A dry wine that's richly fruited. I'm going to kind of work that into my Riesling vocabulary, but that's what this wine is. I mean, it is. It's richly fruited. Talk about, like, in Germany, the grape vineyards are on very steep slopes usually, right? Is it the same in Austria? Is there a lot of steep slopes for the Rieslings that are growing in Austria compared to Germany, or is it more of a German thing?
For the Austrian wine that we enjoyed tonight from the Wachau, slopes similarly steeped, though terraced, as opposed to Germany, while there is some terracing going on, I wish I knew all of your names so I could pick someone out. Does anyone in this group ski?
I'm sure somebody.
No hands are going up. Okay, I don't. You ski. Okay, there's a gentleman down anyway. So when we go to a ski resort and you look at it, it's green, blue, and black diamond, right, John?
Yeah, green, blue, and black. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I believe last time I checked that a green, I'm just going to roll with this stuff. A green is roughly 25% degree slope. A blue, roughly 35% degree slope, and a black diamond is 45. When I stand at the top of a black diamond and I look down, it looks straight. Well, if we go to the Mosel region of Germany, we will encounter slopes of vineyards that are up to 55 and 65 degree slope, ladies and gentlemen. Can you imagine going to work every day on a 65 degree slope? First of all, my glass of wine would fall off the desk every goddamn day. And to do work on that vine in front of me, I have to hold on to the vineyard above that. When I harvest those grapes, I'm rappelling down from the top of the bloody vineyard. These wines are so bloody underpriced for the work that is done in these vineyards. We have absolute value in front of us tonight with the wines that Lily and John have chosen for us. And I will say, Mr. Capon, and you would agree to this, what is the degree slope in general in Burgundy?
It's a lot less.
A lot less, maybe 12 to 15. Those Burgundian producers have it easy when it comes to vineyard work.
Well, yeah, I will say it is amazing. I mean, so I've been to the Moselle and you know, to see some of the the slopes and how steep they are is pretty much like incredible. I mean, it is backbreaking work to farm these vineyards. And the other thing that I think you're right is the fact that, you know, these wines are incredible values because these producers like Dunhoff, like, you know, Nikolai Hoff, they are making wines, and a lot of these guys have been making wines for like generations and decades, and they have histories of family winemaking, and the quality level you get, like this top level, the price compared to some of the other like Burgundies or Bordeaux's or, you know, even Chardonnays, you know, elsewhere, it's really, I mean, they're
bargains, John. Say they're bargains.
They are bargains. I agree. In the world of fine wine, these wines are bargains. I agree with you.
And they're yummy bargains.
Right, right. And so let's move on to the next one. We have some Alsace here. Talk to us about Alsace, which is kind of, you know, it's a region in France, obviously. You know, it's always kind of had a German influence. I mean, it's right on the border there. And but the climate's a little different than Germany, or what are the main differences between Alsace and Germany, do you find?
Well, I would say to all of you who are still with us, and I thank you for that, next time when when the restrictions are lifted and we can all go out to dine in restaurants, open up the wine list. Let's assume that it will be a broad list, well represented, of course, of France, and look for Alsace. It will be the least represented region on every wine list that you encounter. Alsace in general, those wines are hard to sell. As a somm, they're hard to sell. As a retailer, they're hard to sell. And these producers are busting ass to craft unbelievable wines. Which region in France gets the most sunlight, equaling perfect ripeness for all of their grapes? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is Alsace, a region in the northeast of the country where it's just looking at a map, you would suspect that it was all continental climate, and it is, but the rainstorms coming in off the Atlantic would pound it. No, unabashed sunlight, more so than the Mediterranean coast. What region in France has the most different terroirs? Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, Alsace. So for all of you terroir hounds out there who love perfectly ripe grapes, made into perfectly round and fruited wines, Alsace is your savior. yet we engage with these wines so little. As I said a few moments ago, stylistically, Germany's on one side of the coin, lean and mean, great acidity with the potential of residual sugar. We have Alsace over here on the other side. Because of that unabashed sunlight, power, and by power, I mean alcohol. Alsatian Rieslings are generally bigger in alcohol, and for the most part, not just aromatically, but on your palate, dry. So let's have it. Can I have a taste, John?
Please do. I'm drinking. This is fabulous. I mean, this is a famous vineyard, right? The Rosenberg vineyard. And you said earlier that Alsace was kind of in the middle, if I remember correctly, of the German style and the Austrian style. And Alsace was kind of in the middle. No, did I get that?
Austria's in the middle. Germany's on one side. Alsace is on the other.
Right. Okay. Because I get in this, I get that kind of the powerful finish like the Dunhoff has, but I get a little more of that richness, that sunny fruit, you know, which I'm enjoying. And I mean, this is a great wine. But you're right. I always drink the Germans and the Austrian wines, and I always like Alsace. It's kind of like, oh, well, if I want to drink Riesling, I should be drinking German or Austrian, right? Because it's just right? There's only so much room in the in everybody's brain for like regions and wines and which region you go to when you want to drink a great wine. But I think Riesling, you know, has adapted to more regions than people really know.
Yes, listen, Alsace, if we're going to do a little history talk, to say it has suffered, if we were to all go that plane ride that John is taking us all on to Vienna for our culinary tour, once we're finished in Austria, we're going to jet over to Strasbourg, which is the capital city, along with Colmar of the Alsace regions. And ladies and gentlemen, Strasbourg has the most Michelin-starred restaurants of any city in all of France. Yeah. So, John, this is going to be an unbelievable trip we're going on together here. Ready. So, just saying. And so we get here, and they have, in times of peace, this region was French. In times of war, this region was German. So they have suffered from that duality. Yeah. And I'll generalize, of all the regions of France that we know and love, it's one of the few where the names of the wines are the names of grapes. So it should be an easy entree for those of us who are raised in an American mindset of we buy the varietal, not the appellation. And yet still, we cannot pull Alsace over the finish line to get more of these wines in front of people.
I have a question for you about Alsace, a serious question. So Zinhumbrecht, right? I mean, Zinhumbrecht became like the big star of Alsace, but aren't their wines a little bit sweeter in style? And are you a fan or not a fan? Because I think some people kind of associate the region with their wines. And what do you think about them? And have they had a good effect or a bad effect on the region?
Listen, I will not say, John, that it is easy to sell Alsatian wine, because for those who know and love, the problem with Alsace, or maybe the solution to Alsace, is sort of like Burgundy. You have to buy based upon the producer. So if you love Alsace, you could potentially love Zinhumbrecht because of the rounder, richer, more fruit-forward style. And you would potentially love Trimbach and their close St. Hune bottling of Riesling, because you know Trimbach produces long and lean and mean. So overall, Alsace stylistically could be a witch's brew. You don't know what you're going to get in the glass, and that unfortunately deters you from a willingness to dive deep into this region's wines. I beg you, ladies and gentlemen, to put that aside, to put your faith in Lily and John when you go to Acker Merrill, and you say, tonight I am going to have an Alsatian wine, and you need to guarantee me that it is bone dry, long and lean and mean, or tonight we're having some Thai food and I'm willing to go a little bit broader and richer. I leave that up to you.
Who would some of your go-to producers be, like Weinbach and maybe Albert Mann, or who are, you know, 3, 4, 5 guys you would rattle off that you would be very happy to enjoy on any given evening?
I'm going to cop out on this answer. I think the beauty of our country and our wine market of New York, if we're all, some of us I don't think are in New York, because there's a gentleman sitting here with sunlight blasting through his windows. I applaud that stuff. Anyway, that the Alsatian wines in general that come into our country are some of the best. We don't have to edit. A problem with Riesling, if I can return to that, is that 70% of Alsatian wine is sold in supermarkets in France. So what we all could say, John, is that the Alsatians themselves do not respect their region, and so we then have trouble doing it. So what we find on our shores is pretty great. Yes, Weinbach, Albert Mann, Trimbach, the Cuvée Frederic Emile, and the Clos Saint-Hune. Clos Saint-Hune, objectively, if I could say, is maybe the greatest dry white wine on the planet Earth, with all due respect to that region in France that you love so much. Let's go, I'll go with Blanc, which we have in front of us. On and on we go. By village, there are a bunch of different grapes. The matrix that is Alsace, 8 different grapes, 14 different terroirs. Holy smogolis, ladies and gentlemen. That is your life's journey to understand Alsace.
So we have Lily, we have some interesting comments about the Zinhumbrecht.
We have a lot of interesting comments about Alsace in particular, and I wanted to start with one that I'm curious even if John has some input in, because I know I've had some experience with Primox in Alsatian Rieslings.
I haven't. Well, I don't, like I said, honestly, I don't drink them enough, and I want to drink them more. And I think it's kind of that kind of, with the German, I know when I see the GG or the Trocken, I say, hey, this is a style I know I like. So, I'm comfortable. In Austria, I feel like even though the wines may have more fruit, they always finish dryly in the end. So I know like it's something that I'm going to like, But then I get into Alsace, I'm like, I don't know enough. Honestly, I do need to learn more, and I do need to experiment more, with the region. And I think some of the fact that it's not just Riesling, it's also Gewürz and Tokai, Pinot Gris, and other grapes. And there's more of this kind of, community of grapes in the region is kind of maybe confused, the everyday wine lover as well.
Paul, have you had any Primox with the Alsatian Rieslings?
First of all, I did not go to university because I was kicked out for too much hospitality, you could say. So the word flies above my head. But I would say absolutely not. Tell me who these people are who have experienced Primox with Alsatian wine. I see a gentleman waving his hand down there. Who was the producer, sir?
Where is the gentleman? Hold on. Howie's here. Go right ahead, Howie.
Hi, Paul. Hey, John.
How we doing?
98 Clos Saint-Hune.
Which vintage?
98.
98.
And you bought that
Bottles. They're in
half
half
bottle?
Half bottles.
It could have been a cooked bottle, though. Maybe it was a cooked bottle. That storage is opposed.
I had 8 of them.
I've had the same.
I got 2 left.
Issue, so it may just be the wine.
I have 2 left.
Okay.
But I won't auction them because I don't auction wines I know are bad.
Well, that's good. We like to hear that, Howie. But
Ethic. If I know they're bad, I'll suck it up.
Howie,
Yes.
can I assume you're in New York?
Yes.
Perfect. When we get to the other side of this pandemic, you need to take one of those bottles down to my humble little wine bar. We're going to crack that baby open. And if we experience Primox that night, I will bring out a 750 ml of a younger wine to show you that wine and its greatness, goddammit, all right?
I'm excited.
Howie, I think no matter what you feel, I think you're going to lose the argument that night. So just, try to enjoy it.
I'd be surprised, but I'd love to lose the argument. I win either way.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Howie.
Paul, give me your contact info, or I'll say she has mine.
Lily knows all there is to know about me. She'll put us in touch, dude. It's all good.
How are things going? So are you open at all? Any of the restaurants? I mean, you have multiple restaurants, and is everything closed at the moment? Are you doing takeout, delivery service? What are you doing right now?
John, we are completely closed. We made the decision, as was mandated by the governor and the mayor on the 16th, to shut down. I made a decision to protect my team fully. So we have not done takeout or delivery, even though the state now allows us to sell wine from our wine bar. I want to know my staff is safe and sound and quarantining at home so that they don't get sick and that no one else gets sick. And when the governor and the mayor tell us we can reopen, we will reopen with vigor. I think our industry now is obviously suffering. My great fear is when we get to the other side of this thing, that we're going to be limited to 50% capacity,
Right.
which may be the right medical thing. I think it probably is. But I can tell you, John, no restaurant can exist on 50% of the normal revenues. We were not built for that.
Right. You're going to give you 50% rent. If the landlord gives you 50% rent, then maybe it'll work. But if that doesn't happen, it's impossible, right?
Landlords are not relenting, at least in New York. We're going to need help from the governor on that. But like many of my peers, we look forward to the day when we can reopen our doors. And I got to tell all of you, I'm honored to be with you tonight, that rightly or wrongly, what we love about our business, this whole world of virtual wine tastings is awesome, and that could open up some interesting avenues down the road. But what we love is the tactile involvement with you when you come in to join us. When Howie brings in that half bottle of 98 Clos St. Hune, I'm probably going to have to get very physical with him to convince him that it is not oxidized. But I will relish that opportunity to get physical with Howie. We love giving you not just a theoretical hug. We love giving you a real goddamn hug, and we long for the day when we can do that. So, John, I don't know what the future holds for the next 12 to 18 months, like all of us on this who are well-read, blah, blah, blah. Until we get a vaccine, the restaurant business in New York City is not returning to normal.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. We, I mean, when you think about wine ambassadors and people that have done so much for wine, I mean, it's the restaurants. It's guys like you. I mean, you've really, you've lived wine, you've loved wine, and you've done a great service to the entire wine industry. And we really hope things get back to normal, not only for, all of us and everybody's self-interest, but, for all of you who have been, on the front lines, doing it every night, hanging out with people, introducing people and talking to people and showing them, hey, try this, try that, because that's what it's really all about. And wine is really something that needs to be shared. And that's why this format is great. And we hope to continue it long past everybody can still go out to restaurants because, hey, everybody can't go out 7 nights a week. So, maybe 1 or 2 nights people stay home and we'll be able to keep doing this and keep tasting wines. And we do have another wine to taste here, a traditionally great name. Yes, JJ Prum, Auslese.
If we're not using the S word, what are we calling this?
A late picked wine, later picked, perhaps.
Lily, I give you the papal blessing to
I can call it
use
sweet.
the S word.
It's a sweet wine.
Ah!
Pretty good though.
Well,
The
measure of greatness in a sweet wine, ladies and gentlemen, is not how sweet it is how much acidity is present to balance that sweetness out. And what Riesling has, truly, more than any other grape, is unabashed acidity. I know you all know that during the ripening of a grape, sweetness goes in a straight line up. The grape only gets sweeter as it ripens. And acid is a bell curve. And so you want to harvest those grapes when that arc of acidity meets that straight line of sugar. But the glory of Riesling is that acid reaches a point where it does not diminish. And it just hangs out. So even though this is an Auslese, a super late harvested grape going into making this, The acid in it is ringing. There
Yeah.
is the electricity that we found in the Donhof at the beginning of tonight's gathering is still present in this wine right here. It just plays in a completely different ballpark. How cool is that? In addition to the fact, this final wine is only 7.5% alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, this is soda pop for adults. Why are we going to walk away from this goddamn wine?
Well, it's interesting, some of the acidity and what I find with Spätlesers and Auslesers, I've been fortunate to have some Spätlesers from the 60s and some Auslesers from the 50s. These wines over decades actually, they get drier and drier and drier, not in a bad way, but in a good way, right? They become almost like they kind of convert over time. At least on the Spätlese level and the Auslese level, not necessarily on the TBA or ice wine level, which always kind of stay sweet, dare I say. But I mean, this wine to me, it's like, yes, it has sweetness, but it still has the kind of intensity on the finish, the dryness, the acidity. It's a complex wine. Although personally, I do like a little bit. I do like my alcohol level a little bit higher, but you can call me what you want. But I like a little bit, little more touch of alcohol in my wines in general. And that's the one thing like I like about the drier wines, is that like they've raised the alcohol level and making world-class wines. So, and I think people in general, the sweet wines are kind of considered. I mean, this is a sweet wine, right? Even though it has dryness, acidity, interesting components. And it's something that, I mean, would you drink this with dinner? Would you ever drink an Auslese with dinner? Do you do that on a regular basis?
John, I do it all. Let me just stop right there. Anyway, so this question of sweetness and what goes on at the dinner table.
Right.
As the world of cuisines has become more accessible to us. When we go out to dinner right now, I'm an old school dude. Much to my friends' dismay, I order an appetizer and an entree for myself, and I don't share. As opposed to all my friends who go out and order plates for the middle of the table and want to share everything. I suck at that. I am not a sharer. So if you have different foods, different temperatures, different spicy levels, all of that, how do you find one wine that is going to play ball across that board? Well, that's where a little bit of residual sugar comes in to help blend everything together. As John said, and I'm not a scientist by any stretch, and I am not a winemaker. The wine we're enjoying is the 1998. So 21 odd years of age on this wine. It is an intriguing thing, ladies and gentlemen, that with these sweeter expressions, more fruit-forward expressions of Riesling, the older they get, and I have to assume in John and Lily's store that they have some super old Auslese Rieslings for us all to go in there and buy, that the perception of sweetness with age has diminished. And as I understand it, if we look at the molecules of sugar in the wine, in a young sweet wine, the molecules are all singular. They're all flying around the glass. So when wine goes in your palate, it feels like this massive coating of sweetness. But with age, these molecules come together and form a single chain link. So the expression of the sweetness has diminished. If we measured it, it would be the same, but the palate perception is completely different. This 98, if we tried this wine when John Capon first bought this in 2001, this wine, ladies and gentlemen, would be, for most of us, a dessert wine. Tonight, in 2020, it is not a dessert wine.
Right.
I think someone said it. Someone said turkey. If you need a wine to go with your Thanksgiving dinner, hopefully none of us are buying Thanksgiving wines yet, for God's sakes. But anyway, if you need a wine to go with your Thanksgiving table, you've got turkey, which is the blandest protein on the goddamn planet Earth, but you're serving it with cranberry sauce or gravy.
Right.
You've got squash, and depending on who's making it, or sweet
Potatoes.
potato.
Don't forget the marshmallows with the sweet
Yeah,
potatoes.
exactly. So that plate of Thanksgiving food is all over the goddamn place. How do you match a wine with that stuff? Ladies and gentlemen, here you are.
Right. You know,
Yummy.
Paul, for someone that claims not to be a scientist, I have to say you definitely sound and look like one right now. And this is great. I mean, we've had a real full spectrum of wines here, and the Riesling. I think, like Paul said, I think if you want to drink world-class white wines, I mean, Montrachet, the great Montrachets, 500, 1,000, 5,000 a bottle, right? The world-class Rieslings, 50, 75, maybe if you get into the triple digits, and I mean, that's a big deal for drinking great wines on an everyday basis. And I have to agree, from a personal standpoint, these are the wines I drink at home. The Rieslings and the drier ones. I don't drink the sweet ones as much. I will confess, but I do drink these wines all the time. I think they're great wines. And Paul, your passion for these wines is really incredible. It's infectious. It's amazing. I mean, thank you for bringing this, attention in the city of New York, and it's kind of bubbled out of the city of New York. I mean, for the Grape and all you've done for it. I mean, really, Angela Merkel should have you on the payroll, I think, for all that you've done for the Riesling Grape over the years. And, I thank you for that. Is there anything you want to add kind of to sum things up, or if anybody has any last second questions, now would be a good time to get them in, or.
Closing
Any
remarks?
Sorry?
Closing remarks?
Oh, there's always closing remarks. I guess the glory of Riesling is the multiplicity of styles. The problem of Riesling is the multiplicity of styles. So that is a conundrum for all of us wine lovers, because in general, we just want a straight line. We want to know. And I get that, and I applaud that. But all of our world of Riesling is a beautiful, this is such a lousy analogy. I was going to say it's a rainbow, but that's crap, ladies and gentlemen. Because Riesling, one dimension, gives as much voice to vineyard as all of those incredible Burgundies and Bordeauxs and blah, blah, blah that you all love. And then we go a little deeper into that two dimension, where we get producers and vintages and all of those things. Awesome. But then you all get to go to a three-dimensional level that no other grape or no other wine can do when you start talking about ripeness levels of those grapes. No other grape plays ball in a matrix. That is Riesling. I'm again not saying it's the greatest grape, but it is at least a grape and a wine deserving of more of our attention. And at the end of the day, for all of the wines that you all enjoyed tonight, whatever they may be, wherever they are from, we can raise a glass, and I need a little more wine in my glass, to yumminess. And at the end of the day, gentlemen and ladies, that's why we drink wine, because it is yummy. And I will go on record as saying, perhaps Riesling might be the yummiest wine there is. Cheers.
Can I throw one question in as a buzzer beater that someone just put in the chat that I think applies very well to John's expertise and also to yours, Paul, working in restaurants? Someone is asking for guidance on cellaring Riesling, periods for checking in on the wines, etc. So when should you be drinking these wines, particularly perhaps some of the drier ones that are somewhat of a newer style that people don't have as much experience with aging them? And then going to the sweet wines and how long kind of the drinking window is and where you want to check in on the wines.
Aging of wine is very much in the realm of Lily and John. I'm just a simple restaurateur who buys wine and then wants to sell it to you immediately. Having said that, if there was one wine grape that you would never have to worry about in your cellar, it's Riesling, because it doesn't go bad. Mainly because the backbone of the wine, the thing that gives it the ability to live, is acidity. And the level of acidity in all the Rieslings that you will buy, be they from New York, Australia, Canada, Germany, Austria, Alsace, are so much higher, at least 2 to 3 total grams higher than every other wine that you will engage with. They will live forever in your cellars. But that's a simplistic statement. Lily, more specific, dry Rieslings, if you can give them 10 years minimum to age, rock and roll. Sweeter Rieslings, buy a case, drink a bottle today, and then span it out over the next 20 to 30 years, and you will have the greatest joy in your life.
Right. And I think you're talking about the serious wines, the top names. I mean, there's a lot of wines that are made that are meant to be, not aged, they're meant to be just drunk, whether it's in Burgundy or wherever. There are a lot of wines that aren't aged, but the wines we're having tonight are wines that could all age. They're top producers, they're top names, and they're top wines. And, you know, I mean, Paul, you know, even though, you know, I have to correct you, I think we're kind of in the same boat, because we definitely like to sell all our wines as soon as possible as well. We just have a lot of older wines that we're dealing with, but we're still, we love to sell it too, and we love to drink it as well. And thank you for coming. It was great to see you. I hope you get some sunlight soon and maybe get out for, you know, a walk. You know, I know you're down there in the bunker. If you need a barber, let me know. I got somebody that can come see you.
Thank you.
Help you out. And thank you. Thank you very much. Great to have you here. Thank you, everybody, for being Riesling lovers. Drink more Riesling, you know, or Paul's going to come see you. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
We'll be back on Wednesday, everyone. Join us. Thank you, everyone.